Assalamualaikum to Ustaz Muallim and all. Today, my group will present regarding about fiqh revolution, which is contain of foundation, establishment and building. Before we further regarding about this topic, I would like to introduce myself and my team member, which is myself is named Noor Hikmah, and my other team member, which is Farah Nabihah, Noor Afiqah and Noor Amiera Syafiqah. We would like to present regarding about fiqh revolution. Our introduction that will be presented by me, Noor Hikmah. Firstly, for the term of fiqh, it has been loosely translated into English as Islamic law. Meanwhile, for Sharia, these terms are not synonymous either in the Arabic language or Muslim scholar. Kiranya macam untuk maksud Syariah ni, dia mempunyai dua makna yang berbeza dalam bahasa Arab dan juga dari sudut pandangan sarjana Islam. Tapi kalau kita tengok daripada maksud fiqh itu, it totally same with the English translation where fiqh literally means the true understanding of what is intended, yang bermaksud pemahaman sebenar tentang apa yang dimaksudkan. An example of this usage can be found in this Prophet Mohammad SAW statement, to whomever Allah which good, He give the faith true understanding of the religion. Yang bermaksud, barang siapa yang Allah inginkan kebaikan padanya, Allah akan fahamkan kepada dia dalam urusan agama. Technically, fiqh refers to the science of deducing Islamic laws from evidence that found in the source of Islamic law. Kat sini dia bermaksud fiqh ni dia merujuk kepada ilmu yang menyimpulkan undang-undang Islam dari bukti yang terdapat dalam sumber-sumber undang Islam, iaitu Al-Quran dan Sunnah. Untuk lebih faham, kiranya fiqh meringkaskan undang-undang Islam untuk umat Islam lebih faham yang mana kesemua bukti ini terdapat dalam Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah. Syariah literally means a water hole where animal gathers daily to drink, or a straight path as in the Quranic verse. Di sini ia bermaksud jalan yang lurus atau jalan yang dilalui oleh orang ramai untuk mendapatkan sumber air untuk diminum bagi mereka sendiri atau binatang ternakan mereka. The same with the Quranic verse from Al-Quran, which is Allah say, then when you put on a straight path, Sharia, in your affairs, so follow it, and do not follow the desires of those who have no knowledge, which is means kesudahannya kami jadikan engkau, wahai Mohammad, dan utuskan engkau menjalankan satu syariat yang cukup lengkap dari hukum-hukum agama, maka turutlah syariat itu dan janganlah engkau menurut hawa nafsu orang-orang yang tidak mengetahui perkara yang benar. Syariat adalah peraturan, dan ayat ini memberitahu yang kepada Nabi Muhammad, yang mana Nabi Muhammad sudah berada di atas landasan syariat. Maknanya syariat itu sudah sedia ada dan hanya perlu diikuti saja tanpa ada tambahan dan kurangan. However, it refers to the sum total of Islamic laws which were revealed to the Prophet Mohammed SAW and which are recorded in the Al-Quran, as well as deducible from the Prophet divinely guided lifestyle called the Sunnah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama saya Noor Binti Sohaimi dari IC 1204I1. Dan pada kali ini saya akan menerangkan atau mempresentkan saya punya bahagian iaitu bertajuk Foundation. Seterusnya saya akan menerangkan mengenai Foundation iaitu pertemuan atau perjumpaan mengenai fiqh ni, Evolution of Fiqh. Mohamad bin Abdullah adalah orang yang menemukan kajian mengenai fiqh yang di mana dia merupakan dia mendapatkan kajian ini daripada Al-Quran dan As-Sunnah. Yang di mana Al-Quran ni adalah menerangkan mengenai kehidupan Nabi Mohamad SAW. Manakala sunnah ni iaitu ataupun menerangkan mengenai hadis adalah action, iaitu action ni macam dia punya pertingkahan percakapan dengan apa yang dibuat hidup berdasarkan Nabi Muhammad SAW. The method of legislation. Selama 23 tahun ni Nabi Muhammad, Nabi kita iaitu Nabi Muhammad SAW telah menyelesaikan pelbagai masalah yang dengan berdasarkan Al-Quran dengan As-Sunnah. Jadi dia meningkatkan lagi pengikutnya daripada Mekah ke Madinah. The follower increased by time when an incident happened about Hilal bin Umayyah. Seperti yang kita tahu, Hilal bin Umayyah ni dia punya kes adalah mengenai dia memfitnah isteri dia melakukan penzinaan dengan orang lain. Tapi Nabi Muhammad kata bawakan saksi, 3 orang saksi untuk membuktikan yang isteri dia bersalah. Jadi lepas tu dia Nabi Muhammad menerangkan kalau tak nanti kamu akan dilibas. Lepas tu itulah sejak daripada tu follower Nabi Muhammad ni meningkat kerana kes daripada Hilal bin Umayyah. Yang seterusnya, the legislation of salah is the easy example that can be used in enactment of individual laws. In the era in the early Mecca, solat hanya didirikan selama 2 kali sehari, satu pagi dan satu petang. Tetapi sejak munculnya wahyu, Nabi Muhammad pergi ke naik buraq semua tu, maka dikurangkan, maka menjadikan 5 kali sehari. Seterusnya mengenai Mekah period, maksudnya tempoh waktu Nabi Muhammad SAW duduk di Mekah. Tempoh ini telah berlaku apabila Nabi Muhammad SAW telah migration from Mekah to Madinah, berpindah daripada Mekah to Madinah ataupun penghijrahan beliau. The revelation concerned about ideological foundation of Islam, iaitu iman kita, sebagai untuk menyediakan convert to the difficult task of particularly establishing the social order in Islam. Dia menerangkan di sini iman adalah untuk menyediakan diri kita atau mempreparekan diri kita untuk menghadapi task-task yang susah, untuk kita mempraktikkan establishing dalam perintah Islam. Maksudnya jika kita tak ada iman, kita tak dapat nak melaksanakan perintah Islam, kerana iman tu yang menggerakkan kita untuk mengikut perintah Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala dalam. Seterusnya Mekah period ni, yang tadi period tempoh ketika berada di Mekah, setelah menerangkan tadi, yang di mana penghijrahan Nabi Muhammad SAW daripada Mekah ke Madinah. Yang pertama, waktu dalam Mekah ni Nabi Muhammad SAW dia mengutamakan atau mensedarkan manusia iaitu dengan tauhid Allah yang satu, iaitu tiada Tuhan yang disembah melainkan Allah. Nabi Muhammad itu pesuruh Allah. Yang kedua, the next life. The next life ini adalah kehidupan selepas mati, yang di mana kita disebut sebagai padang mahsyar. The Mecca Revelation vividly describe its wonders, mysterious and its horrors, because there is no way for human to know about the afterlife. Okay, yang ni the next life ni dia menerangkan mengenai manusia. Dia menerangkan the next life ni adalah kehidupan yang menyeramkan, mysterious dan wonders. Wonders ni macam khayalan, wandering, macam berfikir luar kotak, yang benda yang kita tak boleh fikir. Okay, itu yang apa yang mereka sebut mengenai the next life. Okay, yang seterusnya adalah the people of God. Good. The Mekah, orang Mekah dia selalu menyebut atau mentionkan mengenai contoh historical that happen of some people that have deceived Allah punya perintah. Dia menerangkan mengenai sejarah-sejarah yang berlaku apabila mereka mengkhianati perintah Allah Subhanahu Taala. Macam mana? Macam kaum Ad dan kaum Samud. In order to teach them, in order to sebagainya untuk mengajar mereka dan memberitahu mereka atau mengamarankan mereka jika orang-orang itu khianati perintah Allah, iaitu tidak mendengar perintah Allah. Okay, yang seterusnya the Madinah period. Tempoh ketika berada di Madinah. Okay, penghijrahan telah berlangsung atau bermula apabila tempoh ni dan kematian Nabi Mohamad SAW. Okay, selepas Nabi Muhammad SAW menyebarkan Islam kepada Madinah, kemudian dia telah mengeluarkan atau appointed as a ruler and the Muslim community become the fledgling state. Maksudnya Muslim ni dia menjadi peringkat yang teratas. Okey, dekat Madinah ni kalau kat Mekah tadi Nabi Muhammad dia menegaskan bahagian-bahagian keimanan, bahagian-bahagian peraturan akhirat, maksudnya macam kepercayaan kepada Allah semua tu. Okey, dekat Madinah ni Nabi Muhammad SAW dia menerangkan mengenai laws ni undang-undang. Okey, ketika ketiga-tiga pillars was revealed and the prohibition melarang mengenai pork, pig, makan pig, lepas tu berjudi, lepas tu membuat hukuman kepada pembunuh dengan pencuri telah dilaksanakan. Okay, maksudnya kat Madinah dia menerangkan mengenai dah mula mengenai peraturan dalam Islam yang sepatutnya kita dengar, yang mesti kita dengar. Okay, yang kedua mengenai jihad. Di Mekah, Muslim dilarang to take arms against the Mekah who were oppressing them in order to avoid their decimation and to include their passion. Muslim people has increased after the rulers of the wars have revealed to fight against the enemy. Okay, seperti yang kita tahu, jihad ni merupakan pelaksanaan yang dilakukan. Contohnya macam jihad ni macam kita punya kesungguhan kita untuk menerima Islam. Tapi waktu dekat Madinah ni, mereka dilarang untuk berpecah belah. Jadi jika ada berlakunya perpecahan belah, mereka akan mengambil inisiatif dengan melawan semula orang-orang yang memusuhi agama Islam ni, iaitulah jihad. Okay, yang ketiga dia munafiqin, iaitu hypocrite, iaitu after the final message, setelah wahyu yang terakhir, orang mula untuk memasuki Islam tanpa mempercayainya. Maksudnya mereka masuk melulu saja tanpa ada ilmu, tanpa ada iman, tanpa ada rasa sungguh-sungguh nak masuk Islam. Okay, setengah daripada mereka menghancurkan Islam dengan memasuki agama Islam, kerana dalam kalangan Muslim are the strongest and they could not fight them back. Kerana dalam kalangan orang Islam terdapat orang-orang yang mereka tidak melawan balik. Contohnya macam Umar kan, Khalifah Umar kita. Dan setengah daripada mereka masuk dan excited, and thereafter in order to shake the faith of the believer. Setengah daripada mereka memporak-perandakan agama Islam ni dengan menyebarkan agama-agama palsu ataupun menggoncangkan agama Islam ni dengan menyatakan hukum-hukum Islam yang palsu. Contohnya macam dia menyebarkan sesat lah. Macam menyebarkan perkara-perkara yang sesat mengenai Islam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Farah Nabihah Binti Mohammad Nasir. I am from IC 1204A1. Today I will present my part, the second stage, establishment. The second stage is the era of the righteous caliphs. This era begins from Abu Bakr and ends with the death of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The Islamic state was rapidly expanded during the first 20 years of the stage to such as Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. The enlargement of the borders of Islamic states has also resulted the emergence of numerous new issues of fiqh as the Muslims were in contact of totally new cultures, customs, systems, and the behaviorist patterns that was not found in the laws of Sharia. The righteous caliphs relied on decisions by consensus, which is ijma', as well as personal reasoning ijtihad, in which they had been trained by the Prophet ﷺ while they were with him after his immigration to Medina to deal with numerous problems. In the course of their extensive use of ijma' and ijtihad, these caliphs established many procedures which later became the basis for legislation in Islam, that is fiqh. In this era, there is problem-solving procedures developed by the righteous caliphs, the general approach used by individual Sahaba in making deductions, characteristics of fiqh that we can learn in detail. So, let's move to problem-solving procedures of the righteous caliphs. When the caliphs of this era faced with a new problem, he would generally take the following steps in order to solve it. It is based on Abu Aminah Bilal Phillips. Firstly, he would search for a specific ruling on the problem in the Quran. Secondly, if he did not find the answer there, he will then search for a ruling on it in the Sunnah, the sayings and the actions of Prophet ﷺ. Thirdly, if he still did not find the answer, he will then call a meeting of the major Sahaba and try to get an unanimous agreement on a solution to the problem. This unanimity was referred to as ijma'. Fourthly, if unanimity could not be arrived at, he would then take the position of the majority. Lastly, if however differences were so great that an overwhelming majority opinion could be determined, the caliph would make his own ijtihad, which would then become law. It should also be noted that the caliph had the right to overrule the consensus. Next, personal ijtihad. The four caliphs were all trained in jurisprudence and any other matters of Islam by the Prophet Mohammed. They were very capable jurists, but at the same time, they do consultation, which is shura, to form an essential part of their rule. This era was one that had not yet witnessed many significant changes, with the number of new issues that require ijtihad. If they were asked a question that needs an immediate answer in a specific situation, where the call or meeting for al-ijma' is impossible, the caliphs used to exercise their personal ijtihad. If this happens, they strongly stress out that this is their personal opinion and not the consensus. The sources of ijtihad are from Al-Quran, the Sunnah, ijma', which is consensus, akal, which is reason, qiyas, istihsan, masalih mursalah, and many more. There are three general causes of ijtihad. The first one is when Sahaba who were in decision-making positions will make it clear that their deductions were not necessarily as Allah intended. For example, when Ibn Mas'ud was questioned about the inheritance rights of a woman who had been married without a defined mahram, He said, I am giving my opinion about her. If it's correct, then it's from Allah, but if it's incorrect, then it's from me and Satan. Next, if they made different rulings on a problem in their capacities and were later informed of an authentic, which is hadith, saying or action of the Prophet on the subject, they will immediately accept it and dropping all differences. For example, when the companions were unsure as to where they ought to bury the Prophet, Abu Bakr resolved the disagreement by referring to the Sunnah. The last one is when neither authentic proof nor anonymity could be arrived at. The companions of the Prophet used to respect the opinions of each other and would not force other Sahaba to follow any individual opinion. The only exception to the present rule was if they found people following practices which, though formally acceptable, later become prohibited. For example, mut'ah, a pre-Islamic sort of temporary marriage which had been allowed within the early stages of Islam, was forbidden by the time of the Prophet's death. Some of the Sahaba were unaware of the prohibition and thus continued to practice temporary marriage during Abu Bakr's caliphate and therefore the half of Umar's caliphate. When Umar became aware of the practice of mut'ah, he forbade it and prescribed severe punishment for the offense. Next, the characteristics of fiqh during this era. The first characteristics of fiqh during this era is real issues of fiqh. It must be based on the actual problem rather than on a hypothetical or just imaginary issues. Besides, this matter also developed and results the formation of school of hadith. Secondly, although the righteous caliph standard to follow certain procedures to achieve legal rulings, neither they nor the Sahaba, as well prescribed set procedures to be followed throughout the Islamic nation, which is the Ummah. This open-mindedness in areas not clearly defined by Sharia reflects, in the first place, the Sahaba's respect for freedom of opinion in such matters. Such an attitude contrasts strongly with the looks of rigidity on the part of certain later scholars. Other than that, it was in keeping with the Sahaba's policy of recommending for the masses the careful study of the Quran without the distraction of legal rulings on matters not defined therein. The third characteristics of fiqh in this era is related to the use of personal opinion in making any legal rulings. The literal meaning of the text of Al-Quran and the Sunnah has the majority from the Sahaba. They avoided giving general interpretations as a general practice, and this practice is followed by Ibn Umar, one of leading jurists among the Sahaba. Other than that, the characteristics in this era concerns the modification of laws of Sharia. This is because the disappearance of the reason for law's existence. For example, prohibition by Umar in giving cash from Baitul Mal to newly converted Muslim. The second factor is changing social conditions. For example, pronouncement of 3 lafaz of talaq at one same time, now binding and not reversible. The last one is no specific mazhab. It is directly linked to state as in the time of the Prophet. The mazhab under each caliph was that of the caliph himself, involving ijma and ijtihad.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Amiera Binti Zulkiflee. So today I will continue present subtopic the third stage of evolution of fiqh, which is building. This stage covered the rise and fall of the Umayyad dynasty. The Umayyad were a kingdom formed after the death of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib in 661 Masihi, and the oaths of allegiance of Bai'ah that Hassan ibn Ali had taken against Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan. Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan was the first caliph for the kingdom of the Umayyad. The name of this kingdom was taken in conjunction with the name of the descendant of the Bani Umayyad, namely Umayyad ibn Abdul Sham ibn Abdul Manaf. However, This government also experienced a crisis and ended due to the constraint that occurs in the Bani Umayyad government. This period marked the attempt at compilation of fiqh, which aimed to preserve the ijtihad of the Sahaba. It was in this period too that scholars of Islamic law first divided into clear-cut schools of law, establishing various mazhab, which in later period were reduced to four major ones. Next, we will look for factors affecting fiqh. There are several factors that lead to the Umayyad dynasty experience setback, which is firstly division of the Ummah. The Muslim nation suffered several devastating socio-political blows, which caused several sects and factions to appear within the first quarter of a century of this period. The most serious were those caused by rebellions of the Khawarij, the Shia, and Abdullah ibn Az-Zubair and his followers. The existence of this political group has influenced the fatwa activity because each has its own legal stance and legal citation methodology distinct from each other. The Khawarij have their own treasury of fiqh and certain leaders. Similar to the Shia, they also have their own legal view that are different from what is held by Ahli Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Secondly, the vision of the Umayyad Caliph. They introduced practice common in the non-Islamic states such as Byzantium, Persia, and India. Many of these were in clear contradiction to the fiqh of the early periods, such as the Baitul Mal was turned into the personal property of the caliphs and their families. Besides, texts not sanctioned by Islam were introduced, and the office of caliph was converted into that of hereditary kingship. The caliphate system replaced by inheritance is something new for the Arab tradition, which emphasized the aspect of seniority, and its arrangement is not clear. The ambiguity of this caliphate replacement system lead to unhealthy competition among family members. Due to this factor, the scholar of this period avoided sitting in the audience of the caliphs, and the principle of shura was lost. Hence, there are some caliphs who have manipulated about faith. Thirdly, dispersion of the ulama. When there is an expansion of the Islamic colony, where each colony has different background of life, social position, and custom, this is the birth of new ruling resulting from the development of ijtihad scholar. As is common, when there are many issues, then various legal approach and fatwa will appear because of different legal views. The difference in the opinion of this ruling does not occur by chance, but resulting from the different mastery of knowledge between them. This difference occur more when the placement of scholars who started migrating in various Islamic colonies, as the possibility of doing ijtihad, shura, or ijma is complicated. In such circumstance, sometimes happens circumstance in which a true Sahih Hadith is not adopted by some scholars in concluding the ruling because they do not have information except those who reach their knowledge only, and they punish according to what is in their hand. In addition, different local factors also influence the outcome of the ruling fatwa. Eventually, they started having each other's followers among the new phenomena that began to be born because of this position was the attitude of um, half the locals to accept the opinion of the law, their local scholar only. This position almost illustrates the first beginning to the existence of sects among Muslims. Lastly, fabrication of hadith. During this period, there was a widespread narration of hadith as new case in the Islamic colony increased. This is because each need to find a backup in concluding the ruling. At the same time, a new phenomenon in a society that has never existed before, namely fabrication of hadith. This activity is done either by those who do not erase proceed to narrate the hadith, or by those who deliberately intend to do a lie against the Prophet ﷺ, and some of them have designed hadith to defend the view of their tribe or group. When this situation occurs, scholars are forced to take cautious step in reserving a hadith narration. Some lay tight condition for adapting hadith. They also spend a lot of time researching the authenticity of a hadith by doing research on matan and sanad. This position is urging the birth of a new knowledge discipline known as ilm al-rijal or ilm al-jar wa al-ta'dil. Among the many contribute to the filling in this discipline of knowledge is Abdullah ibn Abbas, for citing many of his views in compiling this discipline. So next, we will look up for characteristics of fiqh. During this period, scholars and students in the Islamic Empire had divided into two major groups, which are known as Ahlul al-Hadith and Ahlul al-Ra'in. I will discuss the group of Ahlul al-Hadith first. This group of scholars lean toward limiting their deduction to available texts. They avoided making legal ruling on an issue if clearly defined texts from Hadith or the Quran related to the issue were not available. Their position was based on the obvious meaning of the Quranic verse from Surah Al-Isra, ayah 36. The meaning is, do not follow what you have no knowledge of. The laws whose purpose were identified by Allah were used in analogical deduction, whereas those left undefined were not. The center for this scholar is Medina, and the fiqh of the Medinan school was for the most part practical and based on the real problems. Next, the second group is Ahlul al-Ra'in. This group favored the extensive use of deductive reasoning and ijtihad. These scholars used their power of reasoning to arrive at possible reason in case where reason for a law had not been specifically defined. Then they applied that law to other circumstances which had similar causes. Their approach was based on the practice of some of the major Sahaba who had deduced reason for some of the divine laws. The center of the Ahlul al-Ra'in scholar was Kufah in Iraq. The fiqh of Kufah developed along hypothetical questions, which are imaginary situations and what ifs or what ifers. Problems were invented and variations of existing situation gets then imaginary solution work out. So the last part, we will look out for reason for differences. The different approach may be traced to different political factors and socio-cultural background, which is the capital of the Islamic State was shifted first to Iraq and then to Syria at the time of the last writer's caliph, which is Ali ibn Abi Talib. I will discuss about the Hijaz first. The Hijaz was spared much of the turbulence or influx of foreign cultures and ideas. Due to its isolation, life in the Hijaz continued to be easygoing and simple. There was an evidence of hadith in this region, as well as a wealth of legal ruling made by the first three caliphs. Next, I will discuss about the Iraq. Iraq was a new land for Muslims and a virtual melting pot of various cultures where new situations were encountered. Iraq became the birthplace of fabricated hadith as well as the breeding ground for most of the early deviant sects. The scholars of Iraq tended to rely on reason and logic than on the narrated sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because they not being able to rely on validity of the quiet hadith.
Conclusion for this topic is first one, from the preceding chapter, we have seen that our mazhab has gone through 4 basic stages as a result of the effect from the following factors: condition of the Muslim state, in the bracket unity or disunity, status of religious leadership, unified and orthodox or fragmented and unorthodox, and communication among scholars. Kat sini yang saya dapat ringkaskan ialah dari topik yang dibincangkan di atas, yang kawan-kawan saya uraikan ialah kita dapat lihat bahawa mazhab telah melalui 4 tahap asas akibat dari faktor-faktor berikut, seperti keadaan negara Islam itu sendiri, iaitu dalam perpaduan ataupun perpecahan, status kepimpinan agama bersatu dan ortodok atau berpecah belah dan tidak ortodoks, dan komunikasi antara sarjana Islam itu sendiri. The second point is, after the dynasty of righteous caliphs, suddenly a few breakdown of political and religious leadership within the relatively unified state under Umayyah and Abbasiyah rule, and the dispersion of the leading scholars throughout the empire. Maksudnya, setelah dinasti khalifah, tiba-tiba berlaku beberapa pecahan dalam kepimpinan politik dan agama, terutamanya dalam negara yang relatif bersatu pada awalnya, yang dalam bracket di bawah pemerintahan Umayyah dan Abbasiyah, dan penyebaran para ulama terkemuka di seluruh kerajaan. Consequently, a large number of mazhab arose as scholars in various parts of the state were obliged to make a ruling without benefit of that close consultation which had existed when communication was not a problem. Akibat dari sini, kita lihat tercipta pelbagai mazhab dari pelbagai wilayah di negara ini, yang mana cendekiawan dalam mazhab tersebut diwajibkan untuk membuat keputusan tanpa mendapat apa manfaat dari keputusan yang dibuat dari perundingan yang disediakan. The next point is, characteristically, this scholar managed to retain the flexibility of former times, readily discarding their individual ruling in favor of the ruling of others which were based on more authentic or comprehensive hadith. Subsequently, in the latter part of the Abbasiyah dynasty, scholars were caught up in the political rivalry resulting from the splintering of state leadership. Di sini kita dapat lihat pada zaman Abbasiyah, cendekiawan ataupun sarjana Islam ditangkap dalam persaingan politik yang disebabkan oleh pecahan kepimpinan negara itu. The next point is the situation was further aggravated by the official promotion of court debates which brought special royal favors to individual winners and their mazhab. The last point for this conclusion is thereafter it was but a step to a fanatical sectarianism for which many of the followers of the four surviving mazhab become noted. Four surviving mazhab is right now lah, which is mazhab Hanafi, mazhab Imam Hanafi, mazhab Imam Maliki, mazhab Imam Syafi'i dan mazhab Imam Hanbali. Okay, the last point is maksudnya di sini selepas itu hanyalah satu langkah menuju sectarian fanatik di mana banyak pengikut mazhab yang masih hidup hingga sekarang menjadi perhatian, iaitu 4 mazhab yang masyhur: mazhab Hanafi, mazhab Maliki, mazhab Syafi'i dan mazhab Hanbali. Sekian itu sahaja untuk kami punya topik bagi Fiqh Revolution. Terima kasih for hearing and listening to our presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.